Hey guys, Jack here again, and today we have my first league race of Forza Motorsports. So I'm going to go into some details about how the league is run a little bit, but let's just get straight into the race. We're off. The race has a delayed start, so everyone's set off at a little bit of distance just to make sure the first lap is a little bit more clean. So we started the race from reverse grid of the previous race, where I ended up finishing last because I gave myself engine damage. So we're starting this race in P5, and we're going to be making our way back up through the field. So the car you saw drop to the back actually was incorrectly started in the wrong spot by Forza, so he just dropped to the back of the pack to fix that problem. So we're off to a decent start here. We're trying to make our way through the field. We've got some pace on this Porsche, so we're just trying to get by as quick as possible before the guys who are fairly quick are going to catch up through the back of the field. So we had a little bit of advantage with our misfortune in the first race, but now we are putting our head down and trying to make sure we get a good finish. You'll see I'm very, very cautious with my gear shifting in this race because I was very worried about getting engine damage again, which ended up costing me the race pretty badly in the first one. So here we're just trying to get a nice run on one of the exits here so we can make a move around this Acura. We're just trying to make sure we get through the field as fast as we can before the other fast guys towards the back of the pack can really make some ground. Now, here is going to be a pretty good example of the aero wash on some of these cars. So I get a good run through here, but again, just losing all of the grip allows him a chance to come back at me, but we have the inside line, so we're going to take it nice and smooth, make sure we get another good exit. The Viper in this series has its own custom BOP, so this car is fairly good on the straights, it's decent in the corners, but it is very heavy and it feels very heavy. So this build compared to the homologated GT Hopper is a lot more power with a lot more weight. So we're getting back into the swing of things. So this series is a Wednesday night GT series. They have their own BOP, and there are 2 races a night. So you do a qualifying session where you get 3 laps to put down your best time, and that will set the order of the grid for the sprint race. So in the sprint race, it is half the distance, and the weather it can be variable. In this last one, we had a completely wet sprint race. So in that one, we did not do too well because of my mistake with the engine damage. And then the main race here, the endurance, is 1 required pit stop, and on Mugello here we had 24 laps. So in that 24 laps, we have one requirement to make a pit stop. These softs will last probably 13 or 14 laps before they start losing some time. So I ended up pitting on lap 12, and that's just the biggest thing, is figuring out when to stop. Every single car here is going to be using the soft tires. It's definitely the ideal strategy. So as we're trying to make a move on the Ford, we're not really worrying about saving tires or anything. We're just trying to push as hard as we can. Just make sure we can set up a nice little exit with some more straight line speed and try and block off his chance of passing us back on turn 1. So we're gonna get a nice smooth run through here, really focus on the exit again. So to recap, the sprint race is half distance, and then we go into a reverse grid enduro. So all the faster guys are going to be starting further back, and I want you guys to watch the distance that this Porsche gets. This Porsche is incredibly quick on the straights. He was able to pull a full second back on me. Grim Racer said that he was doing 183 at one point on the straights. I feel like he probably made it even faster than that, but that thing is a rocket ship in the build. Now, if you guys are interested in maybe racing in something like this, if you think you're fast enough and you're consistent enough, I would recommend reaching out to PR1 Turk. He is the one organizing this series for us, and it was a load of fun. I definitely recommend getting into a private series like this. You're going to have a lot more clean racing. and you have a lot more chances of being competitive. So we have a lot different rules that you'd see in the Forza multiplayer rules. So in this class, if you crash yourself and get severe damage, you can get a caution for that. Now you're only guaranteed one if it's a solo accident, but if there's multiple cars in a crash and multiple cars receive damage, they will throw a yellow for that, and it'll regroup the field and allow for some more close racing and maybe even some tire strategy if you can time the cautions right. So we are now gaining on first place, starting to close the gap, and Grim Racer was won the race in the sprint race, so I know he had some pace, but in the sprint race we used the short layout, which was a little bit better for the Porsche strengths, which is its straight line speed, but it wasn't that handy in the corners, so when you made it the longer circuit, it wasn't quite as fast. So we ended up having the pace over him, and the main antagonist of this race is starting to slowly make his way through, and if you keep an eye on that leaderboard, you'll see him start to make his way up through the field. So PR1 Turk was probably the second fastest or fastest person in the lobby. Me and him traded fastest laps throughout this race. So as we're closing in, I'm trying to make sure I can get by this Corvette here as fast as I can, as to make sure there's enough gap between me and Turk that I'm not going to have to deal with him as much later in the race. But we're putting our foot down. We're just trying to make sure we keep it clean. You don't want to get a penalty for crashing into someone for no reason. So we're taking our time with this. We know if once we get up close enough to the car in front, he's going to start to feel the effects and get a little bit loose. So we take a nice big run, early turn in right there, taking as much curve as we can. And I honestly wasn't trying to actually force the move here. I just kind of ended up getting alongside anyways, but I wanted to just make him brake on a different line. I never actually intended to get on the outside of him there. Or the inside of him there, sorry. Now we made it the move and finish it right here along the outside, but now we are facing some of that dirty air, so now it's a lot harder for us to put that foot down and create that same gap that we were much faster than the car behind before. But now he's able to hold that gap a lot easier in these corners with the aero wash going in the opposite direction in this game. So we're coming around and coming up to finish this lap. We now are in the lead, and we're just going to try and get as big of a gap as we can while we wait for the faster guys to make their way through the field. So now I want you guys to keep take a look at second place there. Now that gap, it's about 4.1 seconds right now, and he was able to bring this gap in slowly all the way up to the time it takes to get to the pit stops. So with the pit stop happening in this race, I'm just trying to make sure I don't lose any time. So as soon as the tires get anywhere near that yellow range, I'm going to immediately hop into the pits, with the Viper being so heavy in this homologation and already being quite bad on its tires anyways. I definitely didn't want to risk getting into the yellow zone on it. But now we're starting to get to pretty much the fastest point in this race. This track has the most rubber in it, and it's still somewhat sunny. The time of day and the grip on the track have a big influence on lap times. So when it starts getting dark, the track's going to be really, really fast, but when that sun goes down and the temperature drops, all of that lap time that you had before will really start to drop. So I was able to maintain low 49s after about lap 5 for most of this race. But once the full darkness came, like here, I really struggled to drop back down into the 49s. So there was a lot of lap time fall off, but it's not too bad. It's just about maybe a second. So right now we're really, really pushing hard. This is going to be an in-lap for me. So I want to make sure I can get enough of a gap as possible and maintain that gap that I currently have. Make sure he's not able to undercut or overcut me. On an undercut, he would pit the lap before and try and make up the time while I was doing another lap on old tires. If he tried to overcut me, which is what he attempts to do, he is going to pit the lap after and try and hope that I maybe get stuck in some traffic or that getting back up to warm tires, the tires come out a little bit cold. So it takes a couple corners to get grip, that he would be able to overtake that time and be able to pass me in the pits without having to pass me on the track. So we're coming on in, and I ended up making a absolutely catastrophic mistake. I don't know how I did it. I don't know how it happened. It just did. So we're coming into the pits. We're gonna get some fuel and some tires, and I'm just gonna let you guys watch what happens, because I don't actually spot this mistake. I didn't spot this error. So we come into the pits, and did you see it? I unselected the fuel just as my car entered the pits, and I didn't even realize I did it. I do so many of the multiplayer races with a full fuel load already in the car that I clicked, I selected the auto fuel, and then just out of force of habit, just clicked twice, and then clicked skip fuel. I did not realize that your answer is not locked in when you choose the fuel. So I'm battling this guy fully unaware of the situation. I had absolutely no idea at this point in the race that I was about to run out of fuel. I'm sitting here trying to get a good outlap, try and make sure I can get back past PR1 Turk right after he pits, and little do I know, I've completely ruined my race. It's over at this point. I have no shot at the win. I have a very small shot at a podium, and I'm just sitting here driving as clueless as possible, and it's not a fun feeling. It really is not a fun feeling. So watching this back, it does hurt me. I do get a little bit competitive with some of these races. I like to do well. I like it when it feels good when you do well in some of these races and stuff. So I'm pretty competitive, so I try pretty hard. I'll try and practice as much as my free time allows me. And so we're coming in, and there he is. There's PR1 Turk coming into the pit stop, and here is me, completely unaware that my fuel is currently resting at 0 laps remaining. I do not know this fact. So I'm flying out. I just ran a pretty decent lap at the night. I ran a pretty good outlap for having that car behind me, and I made some time up. I'm excited, and I'm just putting my foot down. We're gonna pull this gap. I still, to this point, do not know about my fuel. I still have yet to notice that this is an issue. So I'm just running along. I see that I have a nice gap, just about 3 seconds. So I'm feeling super confident at this point. And I still cannot believe I haven't noticed that I was about to run out of fuel. And you'll definitely see the moment that I realize that I ran this thing out of fuel, because it's the moment it runs out of fuel. I did not notice until we started to slow down. So I'm just sitting here trying to be as fast as I can, pushing way too hard, but we're able to maintain about the same gap throughout the lap. I'm feeling pretty confident, but there's one thing that happens, and I know I'm not the only one who's ever going to run out of fuel in this game. So Forza, built from the ground up, used to have a glitch. If you ran out of fuel, which is happening right now, I am starting the process of running out of fuel. I'm not even sure what's happening at first, because I still don't know. But there was a glitch in the older Forzas where if you had a manual gearbox, you could hit the B and the X button over and over, and it would accelerate your car. So my car's just kind of burping right now. I'm trying to just coast through as much speed as possible, trying not to lose any time. But right now, you're going to see me start shifting the gears. Watch the speedometer. When you do this, it will gain the car by adding a little bit of revs. So if you ever run out of fuel, use this important little tip to help you get back. If you are out of fuel, use manual gearbox, shift up, shift down, and the car will accelerate. So we're going to be making our way back out of the pits, and it's going to be crunch time. We're going to have to put our foot down. It's just a very frustrating situation and a completely avoidable situation for me. So we're going to come back out of the pits in P7, and we're hot. I'm hot. I'm ready to go. I've got to drive as fast as I can from this point going forward. So now we're going to get these tires up to temperature as quick as we can, get them in that optimal little grip zone. It takes about half a lap and then you're pretty much back up to full speed, but the first part of that lap can be a little bit tricky. So once we're back up to speed, we're going to put our head down and try and make up as much ground as we can. So the series is across multiple weeks, so every week will matter. So there's a couple drop rounds. You get 2 drop rounds for the series, but I started this series late, so I can't really afford to have any real bad finishes if I want to have a chance at finishing decent in the championship. So I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to laser in and really focus on this guy. I don't know why, but I was really focused on him. I definitely got a good long stare in at him as I went by him. Not really sure why I did that, but we're going to try and make sure we can finish this pass along the outside. 2 trailer park girls, you know, and we're just going to put our foot down and we're going to try and make sure we can keep it stuck this time. Much better than the first lap of the race where we made that pass. It actually stuck this time and we were able to complete it and pull a big enough gap that we could really get a good run out of this corner. So now we are just putting our head down. We have 7 more laps to really gain some ground, and we got about 5.5 seconds. So we're going to see what we can do. So we're just going to keep trying to get that gap down as we wind through these final laps. So we're just going to be skipping through here on some of the laps, trying to keep an eye on the gaps, as you can see as we go throughout the lap, and it skips to the next one that we are really starting to bring that time down. And there were a couple cars ahead that were actually starting to have some very worn tires, and we were able to almost make quite a bit of progress back to where we almost were. So right now in the party chat, I'm hearing everyone talking about how their tires are starting to go. I know I'm running faster laps. I'm pushing as hard as I can. I make a couple mistakes here and there, but for the most part, I'm able to continue to bring the gap down. This corner right here was really where the Viper stood out from the rest of the cars. I was really able to keep pushing, and once you get that car in your sights, just like you saw right there, I can now start to see that's my extra motivation. So I'm gonna really start pushing hard. Every single thing I've got left. You know, it can get a little finger numbness, a little tired at the end of these races, but we're just continuing to bring that gap down. We're guaranteed to have fresh tires because we had to pit anyways for fuel. So I took extra tires, so my tires are definitely gonna be good without a shadow of a doubt. But as we start coming in here for the final laps, of our first league race in Forza Motorsport. So I think overall this was a great time for me overall. This was a lot of fun. All the racing was clean. The practice session, everyone going for fastest lap and really pushing each other. It was a lot of fun, and I can't wait to do another one next week. So in terms of that, this was an awesome experience. I'm definitely glad that I said yes to this and hopped into this lobby, and it all just came from just saying GG at the end of a race in a public lobby is where I met PR1 Turk and these guys. So thanks to them for letting me know about this and letting me race with them, because it was a load of fun and I can't wait to be back next Wednesday. So now we're closing this gap for 5th position. I want to at least get back to the top 5. So even after having to make an extra pit stop, we know we're definitely going to have the pace if we've caught back up. So let's go. Let's put the foot down. No more mistakes. We got to get this win. So now it is time to push. So I'm going to just really try and push as hard as I can into this last corner. I want to make sure I can get into the draft of this Porsche. If I do, I know I'm going to have a really good shot at passing him, because I've got an advantage in the corners, but not the straights. So we're going to try and get into the draft. And as we do, we're able to hold a lot closer than we normally would. And the Viper has a big advantage on the brakes over that Porsche. So we're going to be flying this thing into the corner. We have one car just getting out of the way there on the outside, staying nice and clean. And just had to pinch my line a tiny bit, but it was all good. We're just going to push and see what we can do on this last lap. So I get back on the throttle way too early and I give myself a penalty. So my mindset immediately is I have to get by this guy and get a big enough gap so that this penalty doesn't matter. So now I am in full panic mode. I am full try hard trying to pass. This is public lobby level of, just trying to keep it clean, but we are going to be absolutely all over him. So now that we're right behind, he's going to get that aero wash, and I think I got a chance here, and I'm going to slip up the inside right here. And we're going to get right back up, get a nice early launch, but he gets back on our inside. We weren't able to get that power down early, so now we got to try and make our way around the outside. He gets a little bit of contact, but we're going to cut the curb inside nicely here. Get a nice exit, and we are going full throttle, but again, he's going to be right on our bumper as soon as we get back out of this corner. So he's going to get right on us, and he's going to get us loose again. So we're going to push out a little bit wider than we'd like. We're going to stick to it, and we squeeze there. We squeeze him a little bit, and unfortunately for him, he gets an off track. It offsets mine, so now it is a straight race all the way to the finish. And with that, we are going to be able to hold off this Porsche with our straight line speed, and we're going to be able to take home 5th place, even with the extra pit stop. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please, if you enjoyed the race, subscribe, leave a like, and comment. I hope to see you guys at the next one, and I hope to see you guys at Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern in one of my private lobbies. See you guys. Peace out.